In August of 2019, something happened that most Americans laughed at. It was a headline that sounded like a joke. It sounded like something from a satirical website, not the front page of the Wall Street Journal. The President of the United States wanted to buy Greenland. He asked his advisors to look into acquiring the world's largest island from Denmark. On social media, people made memes. Late-night comedians had a field day. It was treated as another bizarre, eccentric moment in a bizarre, eccentric presidency. But in the capital cities of Europe, nobody was laughing. In Berlin, in Paris, in Copenhagen, and in London, the blood ran cold. Because they understood something that the American public missed. Greenland is not just a piece of ice. It is a semi-autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark. Denmark is a member of NATO. Denmark is one of America's closest and most loyal allies. When the leader of the NATO alliance talks about buying the territory of a member state, he is not talking about a real estate deal. He is talking about a violation of national sovereignty. He is treating an ally not as a partner, but as a distressed asset to be acquired. And when the Danish Prime Minister politely said no, the President canceled a state visit. He called her comments nasty. He escalated a diplomatic conflict over a transaction that was never possible in the first place. This moment was a signal. It was the moment the specific realization hit the European leadership class. They realized that the old rules were dead. They realized that the United States could no longer be trusted to distinguish between a friend and a target. For 70 years, the global order was built on a simple premise. America provides security. America protects the system. And in exchange, America gets to run the system. It gets the reserve currency. It gets the favorable trade deals. It gets the exorbitant privilege of printing money that the rest of the world has to accept. But that deal depends on trust. It depends on the world believing that America is rational, that America is predictable, that America honors its contracts. When that trust evaporates, the system starts to collapse. We are not watching a political spat. We are watching the foundation of American prosperity crumbling in slow motion. Today, I am going to explain why your allies are quietly building a world without you. I am going to show you the economic traps they are setting to protect themselves. And I am going to explain why the biggest threat to your 401k isn't in Beijing. It is right here in Washington. The hedge. To understand what is happening now, you have to think like an investor. Imagine you have a business partner. For decades, this partner has been reliable. He has been the biggest guy in the room, the one who guaranteed the loans, the one who protected the shop. But suddenly, he starts acting strange. He starts threatening to burn down the warehouse if he doesn't get his way. He starts picking fights with his own employees. He starts talking about breaking the contracts he signed years ago. What do you do? Do you panic? Do you scream at him? No. You are a professional. You smile. You nod. You tell him everything is fine. But quietly, behind his back, you start looking for a new insurance policy. You start moving your money into different banks. You start making deals with other partners. You start building a future that doesn't depend on him. This is exactly what the rest of the world is doing to the United States right now. It is called hedging, and it is happening faster than you think. Look at Europe. For generations, Europe's defense strategy was simple. Call Washington. If there was a problem, the American cavalry would arrive. But after the Greenland incident and after threats to withdraw from NATO, European leaders began using a new phrase, strategic autonomy. It sounds boring, sounds like bureaucratic jargon, but it is revolutionary. It means Europe is preparing to fight its own wars. It means Germany is rearming for the first time since World War II. It means France is pushing for a European army that answers to Brussels, not Washington. They are not doing this because they hate America. They are doing it because they can no longer insure against American volatility. They look at Washington and they see a political system that is at war with itself. They see a pendulum that swings wildly every 4 years. They see a Congress that can't pass a budget. They see a president who views alliances as protection rackets. And they are deciding that they need a plan B, but the military hedge is just the beginning. The real danger is the financial hedge. Look at what is happening in Asia. For 50 years, if you wanted to buy oil, you paid in dollars. If you wanted to buy wheat, you paid in dollars. If you wanted to buy microchips, you paid in dollars. This demand for dollars is what keeps the American economy afloat. It allows the government to run massive deficits without causing hyperinflation, because the world always needs more dollars. But now, countries are finding workarounds. Saudi Arabia is talking to China about selling oil in yuan. India is buying Russian energy in rupees. Brazil and China are settling trade in their own currencies. But suddenly, he starts acting strange. He starts threatening to burn down the warehouse if he doesn't get his way. He starts picking fights with his own employees. He starts talking about breaking the contracts he signed years ago. What do you do? Do you panic? Do you scream at him? No. You are a professional. You smile. You nod. You tell him everything is fine. But quietly, behind his back, you start looking for a new insurance policy. You start moving your money into different banks. You start making deals with other partners. You start building a future that doesn't depend on him. This is exactly what the rest of the world is doing to the United States right now. It is called hedging, and it is happening faster than you think. Look at Europe. For generations, Europe's defense strategy was simple. Call Washington. If there was a problem, the American cavalry would arrive. But after the Greenland incident and after threats to withdraw from NATO, European leaders began using a new phrase, strategic autonomy. It sounds boring, sounds like bureaucratic jargon, but it is revolutionary. It means Europe is preparing to fight its own wars. It means Germany is rearming for the first time since World War II. It means France is pushing for a European army that answers to Brussels, not Washington. They are not doing this because they hate America. They are doing it because they can no longer insure against American volatility. They look at Washington and they see a political system that is at war with itself. They see a pendulum that swings wildly every 4 years. They see a Congress that can't pass a budget. They see a president who views alliances as protection rackets. And they are deciding that they need a plan B, but the military hedge is just the beginning. The real danger is the financial hedge. Look at what is happening in Asia. For 50 years, if you wanted to buy oil, you paid in dollars. If you wanted to buy wheat, you paid in dollars. If you wanted to buy microchips, you paid in dollars. This demand for dollars is what keeps the American economy afloat. It allows the government to run massive deficits without causing hyperinflation, because the world always needs more dollars. But now, countries are finding workarounds. Saudi Arabia is talking to China about selling oil in yuan. India is buying Russian energy in rupees. Brazil and China are settling trade in their own currencies. Why? Is it because they love the yuan? No. It is because they are afraid of the dollar. They watched what happened when the U.S. sanctioned Russia. They watched the U.S. seize sovereign assets, and they realized that if they crossed Washington, their money could disappear overnight. When you combine that fear with the unpredictability of U.S. politics, you create a powerful incentive to leave the system. The world is not de-dollarizing because the alternatives are better. They are de-dollarizing because the incumbent has become too risky. They are building a firewall. And when that firewall is finished, America will be left on the outside. We call this isolationism when we do it to ourselves. But when the world does it to us, it is something much worse. It is exclusion, the mechanism of decline. Let's dig deeper into the mechanics of this trap. Because most people think that American power is based on aircraft carriers, they think it is based on nuclear warheads. Those things matter. But the true source of American power is the global financial architecture. It is the plumbing of the world economy. SWIFT, the Fed wire system, the correspondent banking network. These are the veins and arteries of global commerce. And they all flow through New York. This gives the United States a unique weapon. We can turn off the blood supply to any country we don't like. We have used this weapon aggressively over the last 20 years. We used it on Iran. We used it on Venezuela. We used it on Russia. And every time we use it, it works. Short term. But every time we use it, we also send a message to the rest of the world. The message is, your money is not yours. It is ours, and you are only allowed to use it if you follow our political rules. Now, add the domestic chaos in Washington to this equation. Imagine you are a central banker in Tokyo or Singapore. You hold billions of dollars in U.S. Treasury bonds. These bonds are supposed to be the safest asset in the world. Risk-free, that is what the textbooks say. But then you turn on the TV. You see the U.S. Congress threatening to default on its debt every 6 months. You see one party threatening to shut down the government. You see the other party printing trillions of dollars. You see a former president threatening to replace the Federal Reserve chairman with a loyalist. Suddenly, that risk-free asset looks very risky. You start to ask yourself some hard questions. What happens if the U.S. government decides my country is next? The career civil servants in Washington possess this knowledge. They are the repository of our collective experience as a nation. They remember what worked and what didn't. They know where the landmines are buried. When you fire a senior official with 30 years of experience, you are not just firing a person. You are burning a library. You are throwing away decades of wisdom that the taxpayers have paid for, and you cannot replace that overnight. You can bring in a smart lawyer from a think tank. You can bring in a loyal campaign staffer. But they won't know how the machine actually works. They will make rookie mistakes. They will reinvent the wheel. And while they are learning on the job, real crises will be happening. Real people will be suffering. But perhaps the most dangerous aspect of Schedule F is the precedent it sets. If one president uses this power to purge the government of his perceived enemies, what do you think the next president will do? Do you think they will simply restore the old system? No. They will use the same weapon to purge the loyalists installed by their predecessor. And they will install their own. Every time the White House changes parties, the entire government will be decapitated. The Department of Justice, the FBI, the EPA, every agency will undergo a massive purge every 4 or 8 years. Our government will become a pendulum, swinging wildly from one extreme to the other. There will be no continuity, no stability, no long-term planning. Businesses won't be able to invest because they won't know what the regulations will be next year. Allies won't trust our agreements because they won't know if the next administration will honor them. America will become a giant version of a banana republic, unstable, unpredictable, and consumed by internal political warfare. This is the undoing of the Pendleton Act. It is a return to the chaos of the 19th century, but with 21st century weapons and a global economy at stake. The world is too dangerous for America to be this dysfunctional. We cannot afford a government that is constantly at war with itself. We cannot afford to lose the accumulated wisdom of generations of public servants. But that is exactly what is about to happen. So, where does this leave us? We are standing at a crossroads. On one side is the promise of efficiency and total control. The idea that the president should have absolute authority over every single person who works for the federal government. It is a seductive idea for anyone who is angry at the system. Phones, clothes, the inflation we saw in the last few years will look like a warm-up act. We are talking about structural, permanent inflation. Second, interest rates. The U.S. government owes $34 trillion. A huge chunk of that is owned by foreigners. If they stop buying our debt, who buys it? We have to bribe them to come back. And the way you bribe a bond investor is by offering higher interest rates. That means higher rates on your credit cards, higher rates on your car loans, higher rates on your mortgage. The era of cheap money is over because the era of trust is over. Third, your retirement account. Look at the companies in your 401k. Apple, Microsoft, Boeing, Caterpillar. These are global companies. They depend on global supply chains and global markets. If the world fragments into different blocks, if Europe has its own rules, and China has its own rules, and America is sitting alone in a fortress, those companies lose money. Their markets shrink. Their costs go up, and your stock portfolio goes down. This is the isolation trap. It seduces you into thinking that you can just shut the door and ignore the world. It tells you that alliances are a burden. It tells you that foreign commitments are a waste of money. But in a globalized economy, isolation is poverty. When you cut yourself off from the network, you don't save money. You lose leverage. You lose the ability to set the price. You become a rule taker instead of a rule maker. And for Americans who are used to being the rule makers, that is going to be a very painful adjustment. Imagine waking up in a country that looks like Britain in the 1970s. High inflation, stagnant growth, a currency that nobody wants, and a military that can't afford to leave its own bases. That is the trajectory we are on. And it is not happening because we were defeated in a war. It is happening because we scared away our own customers. The tragedy of this moment is that it is self-inflicted. The world did not turn against America. The world is desperate for America to lead. Look at the panic in Europe when they thought we were leaving. Look at the anxiety in Asia when they think we are distracted. They don't want to leave us. They are terrified of being left alone with the wolves. But they are rational actors. They see a partner who is having a nervous breakdown. They see a political system that is paralyzed by vengeance and dysfunction. And they are doing what any rational person would do. They are moving on. The Republican revolt against Trump that we talked about earlier. The fight over emergency powers. The battle over war rhetoric. These are not just domestic squabbles. These are the symptoms of the breakdown that the world is watching. Every time a president threatens an ally, every time a budget deal collapses, every time a treaty is torn up, another brick falls out of the wall of American deterrence, and eventually the wall falls down. We are entering a post-American world. Not because China won, but because America forfeited. We decided that fighting each other was more important than leading the world. We decided that internal purity tests were more important than external alliances. And now the bill is coming due. The isolation trap is closing. And the only question left is whether we can wake up in time to stop it. Can we rediscover the value of reliability? Can we understand that allies are force multipliers, not parasites? Can we build a foreign policy that lasts longer than one election cycle? If the answer is no, then get ready for a smaller, poorer, and much lonelier America. If you are an investor, or a business owner, or just someone trying to protect your family's future, you need to understand these shifts. You need to look at your portfolio and ask yourself, am I betting everything on a system that is breaking? In the next video, I am going to dive deep into the currency wars. I am going to explain exactly what happens when the petrodollar dies and how you can position yourself to survive the transition. We will talk about gold, commodities, and the emerging markets that might replace the West. If you don't want to be left behind when the music stops, make sure you are subscribed. The world is changing fast, and Washington isn't going to save you. You have to save yourself. Thanks for watching.